This is Sporting Life.
Hello, welcome along to the latest racing podcast. I'm Matt Brocklebank. Today I'm joined by David Johnson, Graham Cunningham and Fran Berry to digest a few of the major developments on and off the track before we look ahead to what's in store at Doncaster, Kempton, the Curragh, Aintree obviously, and wherever else our esteemed panel want to take it this week. How are we, fellas? The sun's out in Yorkshire and there's that magical smell of cut grass in the air. This isn't a bad old time of year, GC, is it?
Absolutely. Morning all. Hope everyone's doing well. I agree. Bang on. And we all look forward to the jumps at the start of the season. But the flat is tantalising because I don't know about you fellas. I always think for most of the winter, and it's a very vague thing to say, I always think they, whoever they are, know a bit more than me. And because of the so many differentials involved in flat racing, I think David will definitely back me up on this. Fran might as well. I think that sometimes I know a bit more than them. Now, it doesn't always work out perfectly, but that's the basis for any bet.
The wizards out there, yeah.
Yeah, the basis for any bet is I think I know a little bit more than the market here. So hopefully we can get the ball rolling at Donny and Kempton, etc. this weekend. Good racing in Ireland too.
I love it. I hope you know a bit more than them, Fran, after your visit on Monday. Was it Monday, I think? Yeah, to Ballydoyle. You led the line as the press pack descended on Ballydoyle. You know, they tend to get a few sort of eye rolls, don't they, these media days? But I guess you just can't ever get bored of going to a place like that.
No, or any yard at this time of the year, but in particular Ballydoyle, like anywhere, Matt, the dreams are live, you know, and in particular with quality and show there at Aidan O'Brien's stable, you know, there's so many things to go on, so much strength and depth to the team as well. Beautiful morning down there as well. And, you know, as I said, the dreams are very much alive, you know, to see the bunch of 2-year-old fillies he's had last year, the way they've progressed physically, looking at least to turn 3, be interested to see how the new batch of Coolmore sires do as 3-year-olds, in particular the likes of Wootton Bassett, and how his 3-year-old performers perform as well. And I know we're going to talk about the Line of Winter and a couple of his colts later on as well, but it's a good way to kick off the week. We're in Jessica Harrington's Monday week as well. She's got a couple of interesting 3-year-olds on show as well, so it's all beginning to get going now either side of the Grand National.
That's it. I suppose, you know, sticking with Aidan, we do have to take these early season quotes with a pinch of salt, GC, don't we? And we did actually learn a couple of pointers from this, didn't we? The Lion and Winter, Lake Victoria, I think they're both behind, unlikely to make Newmarket.
Well, let's start with the Lion in Winter. These press days, they serve a really useful purpose as scene setters. I do miss the days when reporters actually used to do some digging and get a good line for themselves. And the Lion in Winter line is a good one. Now, I know David's a major fan, so I'll throw it to him and ask, because now I'm concerned. This is a horse who would have been very high in the betting for a stallion making race, the Dewhurst, missed it. Now he seems likely to miss another major stallion making race, the 2,000 guineas. I'm concerned, David, and the publicity tide on this horse has turned in the last 7 days, hasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. You know, they say a week is a long time in politics. Well, it seems to be a long time in stable tours as well, because I think there was an At the Races one last week where everything had gone smoothly and the Lion in Winter was very much in the mix for the 2,000 guineas. But the alarm bells are out after that latest update, aren't they? Where I think the latest quote was that he's carrying plenty of condition at the moment and might not make Newmarket. And I think you've expanded on a really good point there, GC. It wasn't just the Dewhurst he missed, did it? Was it? They were initially saying they were going to go for the Goffs Million straight after York. Yeah. So that's 2 targets that he definitely missed. One that it sounds like he's struggling to make. So, yeah, in terms of how good he really did look at York, it was fantastic. But we need to see him again, don't we?
Did you see him on Monday?
We did, yes. He was in the string, Graham. He looked well. He's a well put together horse. He's not overly big, but I just wonder. Obviously, maybe they need a bit more time to get him tuned up as well. And he defied my expectations when he won the 8 coming great style of York. I thought I was dead against him on that occasion. At 7 furlongs on a flat track with quick ground given. It took all the length of the final furlong at the Curragh debut up a hill to get going and get up late on, albeit as a stable second string. So whatever's gone wrong with him in the meantime, but had he not run at York, I would have firmly had him down as a Dante Derby type of horse. So there's a commercial aspect to it too as well. Twain and Expanded are both sons of the Sire de Coolmore, are hoping it's next Galileo, effectively Wootton Bassett, isn't he? So, there's that angle, having a Guineas winning 3-year-old by their main sire would be a big plus as well. And obviously the Line in Winter, being by Sea the Stars, there's no real upside to the pedigree as such on the stallion side at least. So maybe they're going that route, but take the Acom out of it. I thought he was all day long, a mile and a quarter, mile and a half horse, and time may tell that they're doing the right thing by the horse. Maybe he's just not quick enough for the Guineas for all that he was quick enough in that Acom at York.
Fran, did you see a horse called Delacroix the other day? He's a horse I've got a fair bit of time for.
I did. He looked well too. They all looked well, Graham. They all looked like they're carrying a little bit of condition. The word pre-season was Ballydoyle, as it often is the case, we're a little bit behind now. He did have 90 horses up to work at the Curragh the day after the opening day of the turf season. I believe done quite a bit of work up there, and that will bring them on. Leopardstown, the trials day on Sunday, I'm sure he'll have a big team there either post racing or next day, so it'll definitely bring them on. But Delacroix is a horse as well. Last run was Newmarket, was it, off the top of my head?
No, he just got beaten in the old Racing Club's trophy, Vertem Future.
Yes, sorry, by Hot as Hell, excuse me. By Hot as Hell, excuse me, yeah.
He's by Devawi out Teppin.
Yeah.
He's bred to be a really good horse, and he's already rated 116p time form, and he's not got quite the same buzz about him as a few Ballydoyle horse, but I think he's a potential Group 1 horse.
Wouldn't mind seeing a bit of headgear, and he hung quite badly right there a couple of occasions at Ryan, didn't he? But I'd say he was only doing the minimum with him, but yeah.
I love it. After a winter of straight to the festival, we've got straight to the Dante now, haven't we? This is the latest development. I'll tell you what, Fran, what we didn't learn on Monday was what I've just read here now. City of Troy heads to Coolmore, Australia, where he'll stand at stud for a fee of 49,500 Aussie dollars. Breaking news. City of Troy to Oz.
Yeah,
He's
only for
down
under. Not for good.
He's headed down. He's popping down under, is he?
Yeah, and Ryan Moore is staying down under for a big day in Australia rather than riding at the Dubai World Cup. So all changed.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's switch over to the fillies. DJ, as you say, a long time in racing is a few days, 7 days. We had Late Victoria. She went from, I think it was on at the races, was it? She looks a strong candidate for the 1,000 guineas. To what did we get? I'm not sure she'll make the guineas, but we're training her for it. If she doesn't come in time, she'll go to the Curragh the day after.
Yeah, so it just this is the problem, isn't it, with these horses in the spring? They just either they come there or they don't, and it's the perils of anti-post punting, and we'll just have to see how things progress over the next couple of weeks, because there's still quite a long way to the Guineas yet, isn't there? It's still sort of over 5 weeks away, so there's plenty of time yet, a bit more sun on our backs. Hopefully we'll all get there.
I'm sure the answer to this is no, but is there a chance that Aidan's placing slightly less stall on 2,000 Guineas weekend after getting burned, shall we say, with August Rodin and City of Troy in the last couple of years, because it hasn't gone well on the first Saturday in May, has it?
You wouldn't be shocked.
Well, that's it, isn't it? And not only that, but these horses, they're hopefully going to still be having them on the go for the Breeders' Cup and possibly even out in Hong Kong and Japan later in the year. That does seem to be an emerging trend, doesn't it? And if you're peaking in May, it's very difficult to still be at that level, isn't it, in November, December time.
Fran, what about this Storm Boy, Fran? Did you see him, the Aussie sprinter who's come down for a Royal Ascot assignment?
Yeah, I did. I got a good look at him. Obviously, he's by Justify. I didn't read about him, what he did in Australia, Graham, but he didn't strike you as a Star Spangled Banner Schwazier type sprinter. He's big, long range unit and a lovely looking type, as you'd expect. Bringing him up from the Southern Hemisphere, there would be a bit of quality about him, but he didn't look like a pocket rocket. He looked like a rangy, Big long walker, lovely way of going when he goes by on the gallops as well. Be interested to see where he makes out. Aidan said he's a lot of speed, and they will probably aim him at sprinting trips. But looking at him physically, you wouldn't be surprised should he stretch out as the year goes on as well. But interesting dynamic to see how Justified Southern Hemisphere bred one does up here. Of course, they're learning about them as they go, but based on what we've seen in his Northern Hemisphere horses, it's all 7 furlongs a mile plus that they tend to come into their own.
Obviously got the 7 furlong Group 1 at York this year as well, so that could fall out well.
And a weak division, with the greatest respect to the sprinting community, last year it was spin the bottle stuff, wasn't it? Every day was a different result.
Well, I think in generally this 3-year-old crop, Ballydoyle and wherever, it's very important, because I didn't think the older horses were super deep last year. So if the 3-year-olds can aim up, they're going to have a good year up to June and beyond when they start taking on the older horses. You think Blue Stocking is smashing filly, she won the Arc, and we don't have City of Troy anymore, etc., etc. There's a lot of big races up for grabs this year, and I think the 3-year-olds should make a big splash.
The one thing
could do quite a bit of heavy lifting, couldn't he, for these older horses?
Which one?
Calandagan probably going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting.
Yeah.
I wouldn't forget Jan Bruegel, last year's Ledger winner as well. He's 4 from 4, and interesting that there's been a tweak in the pattern program. There's a Group 1 in France earlier in the season that he can run in, obviously avoid Kyprios as well. And he mentioned a Hardwick for him, trying to, make a 1.5 mile horse run a stair as well. But we don't know how good he is to date yet. I think he only does the bare minimum to go and win his races.
Speaking of stayers, I just kept reading that all these horses are out to avoid Kyprios. I think he mentioned Kyprios in about 4 or 5 comments about some of the other older horses. So obviously he's doing well and going back for the Gold Cup again. Just on the fillies, Fran, and I know you love an Oaks project, put it that way. Fillies Mile 4, Dreamy. She's one that sort of just struck me as a filly who might bounce back and really thrive over middle distances later in the summer.
Yeah, and it's a question of where they all fit in, Matt. Obviously, it's such strength and depth to his fillies contingent last year as well. But she's one you'd imagine stepping up to that 1.25 mile, 1.5 mile trip would come into her own physically. Last year, she looked like only a work in progress as well. So there's a bit to work on there as well. It's very good to see Fairy Godmother back in action. Obviously, we haven't seen her for quite a length of time. She won that race in the Albany, wasn't it, at Royal Ascot in such great style late on, getting up, and he was very positive about her. It sounded like they may well try her beyond sprinting trips as well, and see how she fits in there as well. So that was an interesting one to take away from that, where she'd step up and trip. But Dreamy's one that he was very keen on it as well, or you'd think there's definitely upside to her as well. And Bubbling also is worthy of mention as well. Known in Ever filly that won a Newmarket at the back end of the year in the Rockfell, wasn't it? And he said that she could step up to the mile and stay better than most known in Evers.
Was there much talk about the big time story? Do you remember? She obviously looked like the potential real star midsummer, didn't she? But the wheels rather came off as others stepped into the path that she sort of vacated. What were the vibes about her?
Yeah, back on track, and tactically got her wrong. He's saying at the end of the season as well. Now, for me, she's got to prove that she's, mentally trained on, I suppose, much Anton David. But, I think they're going to try and change the tactics with her, hold her up, needs a sound surface, and we'll be hopeful that she will be very competitive this season as well. But I suppose on the back of 2 below par runs, there will be a question mark. Was she an early season 2-year-old? But her dam, Mecca's Angel, did train on, as we know, and she's by Frankel, so the scope should be there. But that foregone enthusiasm was probably to her detriment late on last season.
Okay, let's wrap up some jockey business, GC, over the past week or so. Now we know social media can be a bit of a tricky tool at times. It leads us to Neil Callan. He's got himself in an 8-month ban. Am I right in thinking this is like completely suspended for 2 years now? Because I think I've seen him booked to ride something in the Lincoln on Saturday.
Oh yeah, it's suspended. It's an interesting case, this. I know Neil quite well, and being reticent is not in his nature, but he's going to have to put a Conrad Knight sock in it for the next couple of years. He really is, because he can't afford, at this point in his career, he can't afford that ban the 2-year ban to kick in. I can't recall exactly what the comments were, and it's not like, you know, wife beater Joey Barton, when he was sued by Jeremy Vine, all the comments came out about Joey Barton saying that Jeremy Vine was a big bite nonce and stuff like that. But we didn't get the comments reported here, and I believe some of them were directed in the on the route of Tony McGlone, a Stipe steward, etc. And I'm a bit uneasy about them imposing this sentence without saying what was actually said. It's all a bit behind closed doors, but either way, Neil's going to have to temper his annoyance when a steward or an official or someone in British racing does something that displeases him from now on. It won't come easy for Neil, that.
Just looking at the timelines of it, I think they reported that some of the comments were made on January the 13th, and then there was a story in the Racing Post the following day, and that was the PJA responding, and it was comments that he'd made about the Robbie Dunn, Bryony Frost case. Said if this was a young male jockey being bullied, would it have got the same attitude, the same attention? I think not! ! Hashtag say what everyone else is thinking. So, and obviously at the time he was a PHA board member, PJA board member, which I think he still is at the moment. So I think those were some of the comments alongside, like you say, the comments to the steward.
That's good info. But no, BHA don't take kindly to stuff like that. And Neil's going to have to, as I say, he's going to have to wind his neck in. It's going to be, you know, it's a bad spell when something like that happens. And if Liverpool, after a bad week last week, if they happen to blow the league as well, Neil Callan will not be happy.
David, perhaps you can clear up the latest on that. Nicola Curry received a fairly lengthy suspension. This was on the back of, well, in the interview in the Racing Post, said that she'd been riding it to win at all costs, I believe was the slightly grating quote. And then we had Ryan Menier's very bizarre discrepancy, which saw him sort of slapped on the wrist and hit with an 80 quid fine. Can you just wrap those up for us?
You know, the Ryan Mania one in particular is quite interesting because it's on the horse Mr. Incredible, who is one of those horses that everyone's seen. He's a proper monkey. He's got a double squiggle, which, as Timeform say, it means he's so temperamentally unsatisfactory as not to be worth a rating. So Ryan Mania went out to ride him at the weekend, and because Mr. Incredible is the type of horse that doesn't respond to a whip, he chose not to have one at all, which apparently there's a rule that jockeys all must carry the whip. And obviously not taking the whip out, he was fined £80 for doing so. But I was just making the point that when so much of what we've looked at with regarding the BHA and what they've done with the whip, a lot of it has been about perception and how people think about the use of the whip. And just the BHA fining a jockey for going out there, not taking a whip, almost it's like if the antis see that he's been fined for not having a whip that he can go and beat his horse with. It's just not quite a great look, is it? So it'd be interesting to see if that does get picked up on. But Nicola Curry, it's just, as we've seen before, these jockeys that don't necessarily have loads of rides. They're just sort of really trying to, like you say, win at all costs, and it's just a case of getting done under the totting up procedure.
I do detect a slight change in jockeys' reaction now. Nicola, to her credit, said, "It's on me. It was my fault. I'll learn from this. It won't happen again. I was trying to win at all costs," and accepts it. And I do think the jockeys tend to get it a little more than they used to, rather than just, you know, giving out straight away that the rules are an ass, etc. I think they are, by and large, riding much more within the rules than at any point in our memory.
Bizarre that Mania didn't actually know what that was a rule, or no one seemed to know that was a rule. But speaking of rule changes, the walkovers, GC, were you actually present for this one as well?
I was. You know, it was
how many walkovers have you seen in your career now?
It was last Wednesday, yeah. I went down to Haydock, and it was a, you know, because of the dry spell, it was a ropey card with very small fields, but I didn't have anything else to do, and I did fancy one in the first race.
And it did win the walkover, yeah.
It was a 3-runner race which became a 2. Mine was pulled out, then it became a walkover. I watched the walkover. Who was it? Was it Sean Quinlan on the winner who gave an ironic salute as he passed the post? And I went home soon after. It was a right waste of an afternoon. But it just, again, it made me chuckle. We're always talking about the corporate stiffs at the BHA and what they get up to and what have you. And they've put in a policy whereby, walkovers now don't have to walk or trot past the winning post anymore. Why don't you get on with ensuring there aren't any walkovers, lads? Try and get some reasonably competitive race rather than just thinking about we're going to have some more walkovers. Let's make it easier for them to walk over rather than actually having some horses in a race. But no, that was a bit of a frustrating afternoon for a lot of people at Haydock last week.
But it sort of feels like a rule change, David, that maybe 20 years too late, doesn't it? I mean, what? It's just bizarre.
Common sense finally catching up, isn't it?
Yeah.
The whole idea of having a horse walk over, it's like Monty Python, isn't it? In other countries, it just would never happen, but it's still a part of the furniture here.
Sensational. Shall we focus on something that's going on the race course? It would feel like an appropriate time, unless GC wants to talk about the latest Savile report regarding prize money. But
I think they're back, aren't they, PR? No, I don't, not really, but they're making bold statements about how millions and millions of potential prize money is being withheld, and they are making another veiled threat about some form of action down the track. So more to follow, I think.
Yeah, straight to the government, I believe. Okay, we'll come to Donny in a second, but Fran, I'm hoping at this stage you might have had a glance over the entries at Leopardstown. We've got a couple of Group 3s, the Ballysack Stakes, obviously. It's early days, isn't it, in the season? But again, we've got a few O'Brien runners in that.
Yeah, it is, and it's on the first of a good weekend as well, Matt. Obviously, the Curragh is on Saturday. We got a good card there as well, and interesting enough, Camille Pizarro's got an entry in the Leicester Pig Gladness Stakes as well. Year in, year out, you see an Aidan O'Brien 3-year-old or older horse in the early Curragh meetings come up short, whether it's for fitness, not class, and it'd be interesting to see how he performs. He does handle it cutting the ground well anyway, at least, and were he to pitch up there, he's going to have to take on Hurricane Ivor, who bolted up in a handicap last Sunday at Naas, where I'm currently parked, actually, Naas Racecourse, and he's gone up 15 pounds in the waist to a rating of 106. So it'll be interesting to see how he runs off that. But I don't know how the handicapper can quantify that, but he definitely didn't improve 15 pounds in 8-year-old.
There were some wide margin winners on the day, weren't there? There was some serious.
Yeah, exaggerated results. Yeah. And Carl Burke has got Portmaster as well, entered in that race. It'd be interesting where he'd come over as well. Group 2 winner to Curragh last July. Well worth watching that Gladness Stakes as well. And Aidan has a number of maidens entered at Naas, or the Curragh on Saturday, that third race, that 6 furlong maiden, Smiling, has had the benefit of 2 runs. She should be hard to beat. And an unraced one in the 4th race, the 7 furlong maiden, Evolution, who was the subject of a positive mention, if you like, last Monday as well. Interesting to see how that goes. And for Irish Lincoln watchers, Randy obviously is going to be in the English Lincoln apparently on Saturday. Indigo 5 finished 4th in the Irish equivalent. He's back to around at the Curragh on Saturday. He'd be interesting in that mile race, the last race. But you're talking about Leopardstown. It'll be all about the Aidan O'Brien team, how they perform, how they've done over the winter. That Ballysack Stakes, looking at the opposition to outside of Aidan's, it doesn't look particularly strong. Adrian Murray / Amber Racing have a number of entries in it. Caroline the Jetstream, very likeable filly who's got the benefit of recent race fitness, could be an interesting one. They won this race with a 50-1 chance last year. Shamie Heffernan making all in bad ground as well. And Joseph O'Brien, in a week where intense raffles is the subject of a lot of media attention, of course, ahead of the Grand National. Simon Ear and Isaac Swade of Cabresis there, who was very good when he won and stayed on well despite being green at the back end of the season at the Curragh. Interesting to see how to shape up, but the likes of Aidan has obviously got Delacroix on there that Graham was mentioning, and he's interesting. And in the fillies race, the Group 3 can often be a very messy race. 7 furlong star Leopardstown, short run to the first bend, 21 entries. You're going to get nearly a full field. Can be a lot of hard luck stories, but Barna Varna, trained by Jessica Harrington, would be the most interesting for me. Third Heaven's Gate when last seen in Group 3 company. She's a strong traveller, and crucially, she's won on both types of ground. We're due to get rain here on Friday. She'd be interesting taking on the likes of Bubbling, who would be a standard bearer in some respects for Ballydoyle in this, and Shantae, trained by Ger Lyons. She looked very, very good when she won an Irish Champions weekend. So it's a proper flat weekend of racing that we're going to learn plenty from, I'd say, but could be tough punting on the same front as well.
Group 3 as well, Fran, with Scotty Champ. I think he's going straight for the Guineas, but Aiden has Henri Matisse and Camille Pissarro, both Group 1 winners, and both entered for that.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, if he splits them up, if Henri goes there and Camille were to take his chance at the Curragh on Saturday against the older horses, that'd be an interesting one. Scotty Champa, he's an interesting one, lads, because whilst he was a 12-1 chance when he won the National Stakes, he'd missed the start on his previous start when beaten by Henri Matisse. He got out of gates crucially, and the trainer tipped him to all and sundry. Anyone he met at the Curragh pre-race National Stakes said, this is as good a 2-year-old as I've had for a long time. I think he'll win here today. I didn't meet him, unfortunately, today, pre-race, I knew at least, but I know a few men that did, and it might not have been the freak result that it looked on the day to some extent.
I've got to apologise, Fran. That was the day you met me and we had a coffee together. So while we were having coffee, you were missing a big prize winner.
We got a free coffee on our ground. That was the main thing.
Yeah, I noticed that when your face appears in that cafe, there are no bills appear. You just get what you want.
Anything for a favourable mention.
Actually, got a tracker horse running at the Curragh, or entered at the Curragh on Saturday. Is it? It's Tommy Stack. Is it Tommy Stack? No, Tommy Stack's dad. Fozzie Stack, yeah. He's got that 2 stars running, who I remember reporting on it at Doncaster when he ran over 6. Absolute bomb through the race and just ended up getting outstayed by Eye of Dubai. I remember saying that day that'll win races early in the season back at the Curragh. He came to hand really well last year. Goes well on testing ground, and he's back at 5 furlongs. So he's ticking plenty of the boxes I was hoping to see. So that's 2 stars, I think, in the 2:30 at the Curragh on Saturday, 2:15. So keep an eye out for him.
2 stars, 1 point.
Very, very good on testing ground, Dave. He can hang left under pressure. That's the closer he gets to a rail or stands a rail to Curragh, the bigger his chance.
And just on these ammo horses, Franny, like they're fully back in Adrian Murray. He's like very much the go-to man now in Ireland. They're all with him, are they?
Yeah, I don't say. I believe there's outside of maybe a partnership with some Al Shakab yearlings that were bought last year. That maybe I think with Donnacha O'Brien, maybe Joseph O'Brien as well. I'm not quite sure, one of the O'Briens at least. Adrian Murray is the trainer in Ireland. They've hit the ground running at Dundalk, Matt, doing really well, but it's something like the phony war up there at that time of the year, February and March. You know, you're winning maidens and conditions race with well-bred horses as well. You're going to be taking on a different level of opposition, but you know, they're bred to be good. A lot of the runners Ammo have as well, and early season race fitness might count, but they've hit the ground running and they're in good form at least.
Yeah. Okay, shall we have a look at the Lincoln, the William Hill Lincoln this year? David, it's possibly not the hottest edition of the race, is it? We've seen for, you know, in the last sort of 10 years, but we've got the usual suspects really in there, haven't we? Anything stand out for you?
Not really. I mean, there's a few of the more interesting ones that you'd have had on the horizon, anti-post that didn't get declared or confirmed, did they? Kirat of Rafe Beckett's perhaps one of the most notable ones. Yeah, exactly. Wiseman's Ferry. I think he was favourite, wasn't he? And I think this Whip Cracker looks quite interesting. He's one that I thought was still potentially overpriced at around 16-20 to 1. Finlay Marsh already booked on, and I thought he shaped pretty well in the Lincoln Trial at Wolverhampton. I mean, it's a race that has a pretty poor record of throwing up the winner of the Lincoln itself, but Whip Cracker, he was well back that day, shaped well and ended up sitting in midfield. It was a race that was dominated on the front end pretty much. Symbol of Light definitely got first run, and then Whipcracker doing some of his best work at the finish. And obviously off the same mark with Lincoln being an early closer, I could see him going well. But the temptation is to look out for these horses that are going to be in group races by the middle of the season and the end of the season, but there probably isn't a huge amount of them in there this time.
No. Richard Hughes started this last year. He certainly started the season extremely well. GC, we're looking at still potentially holding ground, aren't we, come the weekend? I know.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it could be good ground. I'm really pleased about that for the entire meeting. Speed is what you look for in good flat horses, and I think that should come to the fore a bit more than it sometimes does on this weekend. Those two horses towards the top of the market, Thunder Run and Midnight Gun, they look dead solid. They're both lightly raced, already pretty smart and progressive. So no flash story there. Everybody can see that they've got good chances. Two of the horses I'd like to mention, horse called Myal, M-Y-A-L. Steph Hollinshead trains. If he was in a bigger yard, he'd be a shorter price. He was thriving second half of last season. I think he won 4 on a run, and I think he might get a run. You'll be able to check the numbers. But the horse I'm interested in for this weekend, I think he may well end up in the Spring Mile rather than the Lincoln Gents, because he's 36 on the list at the moment. His name's Tribal Chief, David Manwissier, won the Lincoln a couple of years ago with Migration. This is a different type of horse because he's just working his way through the handicap ranks at the moment. But he really progressed in his last 2 or 3, 4 runs last season, and he's got a turn of foot, and that tends to be the sign of a handicapper who's still going to get better. So I would say of all the horses I've mentioned, keep an eye on that Tribal Chief. If he sneaks into the Lincoln with a low weight, great. I suspect he won't. If he runs in the Spring Mile, keep a close eye on him.
There's an interesting one of Richard Fahey's that he might run into in the consolation race. This R Havana, who absolutely gagged up over 7 furlongs at Southwell last time. And I was thinking, surely they're going to be looking to run him quickly under a penalty. And rather than running back at Southwell under a penalty the following week, they've kept him for this early closer. So obviously, I dare say the Lincoln Consolation is going to be worth a few more quid. He won first time out on good ground at Newmarket last year. The question is whether he's going to be quite as effective over a mile. He's tended to race up to 7 furlongs so far, but in terms of handicapping point of view, he'll probably go there with sort of £6 or £7 ahead of his mark.
What number is he on the list at the moment, David?
He's sort of way down. He's not going to get in the Lincoln, so it's very much a case of the consolation. I think his mark's only 88, whereas I think you need to be low 90s to be getting into the Lincoln this year.
Spring Mile forecast then, Mark Havana and Tribal Chief. No worries.
There was another one that might end up in that race of Archie Watson's Ocean of Dreams. It was
that the O'Brien purchase.
Yeah.
My Derby bet anti-post after he won Leopardstown as a 2-year-old.
Well, he bolted up in that maiden as a 2-year-old, as you say.
Yeah, I thought he was going to be an interesting horse, but
this time last year, Fran.
It was. I backed him after Leopardstown. Grey might have been 33-1 or 50-1 for the Derby. You know, you take a swing at something a little bit away from the obvious, maybe. And when I seen him entered for the Ulster Derby instead of the Epsom Derby, I knew I was in trouble. So it was kind of
yeah, he's maybe one for later in the season over a 1.6 miles.
Very much so. Tony Martin's got a Randy bidding to do the double. I believe he travels. And
did he get a run? Because Tony seemed a bit sceptical about whether he was going to run him, didn't he?
The chat was that he's likely to go early in the week at least, unless that's changed. Drying ground now would be a concern, Graham. He'd want soft in it. He's very effective with slow ground, and the Curragh was particularly deep ground where he's won his couple of races, but ground may be a factor. But the intention, actually talking to Tony last weekend, and I know he tried to book Shane Foley to go and ride him yesterday at least, was thinking of running him. So, but that's what's this Wednesday, obviously declarations tomorrow. Maybe drying ground will be putting him off travelling.
He could end up on a lovely weight in the Lincoln if he does come over. And thoughts on the Cammidge Trophy, gents? I mean, I see Dr. Richard Newland. He can't get a national runner, can he? But he's got Witness Stand in the Cammidge. Extraordinary.
I had a good look at this race this week. I think the market's probably got it about right. They start with Witness Stand, who I think they bought him for 100 grand from Tom Clover, who got a real improvement out of him when he put cheek pieces on. And they took him to Saudi for that turf sprint, and he got shuffled back, then shuffled wide, but he was beaten a long way. So he's got a question to answer after that. Marshman, who looked all over the winner in this race last year, looks really solid. He was gelded and had a wind operation after regressing last year, but he's come back on the all-weather with 3 really, really good performances, including at Southern last time, just behind Clarendon House. He's got the £3 penalty. That's the slight concern, but he looks the right favourite. James's Delight is a very, very good horse on testing ground. He has won on good ground at Newmarket last spring, but I wonder whether he might just get a bit chopped for speed if the ground dries out. And Spycatcher, don't know whether he'll run. He's Marshman's stablemate, but he's got a good rating for a race like this, and he does have a really good record fresh. Iberian was a really good 2-year-old. I think he runs, but he was pretty much all out to beat a 90 rated horse at Southall. So I think Burke might hold a key, possibly with Skycatcher, but probably with Marshman.
Okay, interesting on the ground. The last I read was that they were expecting minimal dry back, GC. So
minimal what?
Dry back. So I suspect they were
back?
thinking, course officials were thinking very much still on the softer side of good.
Hang on, what is define dry back?
Oh, is it evapotranspiration, GC?
Oh, Jesus.
I was surprised it was still good to soft in places this morning. It doesn't appear to have. That's the same going description as what it was Monday morning. So there's been minimal, if any, drying out in the first 2 days this week.
But it's been in a lot of places. Can't speak for Donny, but it's been the driest March on record, hasn't it? Or certainly the driest March for a long, long time.
Okay, the Kempton card, David, on Saturday isn't to be sniffed at either. The Queen's Prize, this always reminds me of a board game I used to play called the Really Nasty Horse Racing Game. Anyone else? Probably just me. Anything on the card at Kempton?
Not really in the Queen's Prize, but I thought the Rosebery was a really good race. One that perhaps Andrew Boulding might hold the key. He's got a horse that is really effective under these conditions. And I should have probably practiced saying the horse's name before coming straight to it. But it's this 2 Messiah's Fox is one. Yeah, that's one of them. But there's a really interesting 4-year-old as well in this Mount Atlas who won a race at Ascot that worked out extremely well and did well, having come from behind that day, beat Insanity that I think went close to winning next time. Table Talk came out and won the Melrose. Even the likes of Burdett Road were in behind that day. And then he absolutely bombed through a really competitive 1.5-mile race at Newmarket. In hindsight, might have been committed for home a little bit too soon. Traded at 1.14 in running and ended up being beaten 3 3/4 lengths by Sun God, but was 4 lengths clear of the third. He's gone up £4, but I'd just be amazed looking at his profile, his pedigree, the fact he's been gelded. Everything suggests he should be a better horse this time around. And
who trained him, David?
He's another Andrew Boulding horse, Mount Atlas. So just sometimes we see some of these horses that have been on the go in this kind of race all winter. When they meet these horses that have got proper turf form, they just get blown out of the way. And Mount Atlas is one of them that I could see being rated in the low 110s by the end of the year. So I think a mark of 98 is very, very workable.
Also got that Snowdrop Stakes, which looks a good fillies race, listed race, I think. At the moment, the Soprano is, I think she's even money. Bookmakers being very defensive. She had a really good year for George Bowie last season. But Godolphin looked like they're going to bring back Devoted Queen, who was absent after King George Day last year. It's a complete forgive, the flop on King George Day. She was favourite for a pretty good fillies race. And she went down really, really jarringly at the stalls. And I'm sure something must have gone wrong. She didn't run a race and was absent since. But prior to that, she was unbeaten. And when she won that, I think it was a listed race at the York Dante meeting, and she beat Spiritual and a few other really useful fillies, she looked pretty good. So, and we've got Shawari coming back. She hasn't been seen for 530 odd days since she finished second to Ylang would see the fire in third in the Fillies Mile. So as Fran said about Leopardstown and the Curragh this weekend, there are pattern race horses kicking off, hopefully at Donny and hopefully at Kempton as well this weekend.
It's not just the quality, is it? It's just so refreshing after the winter we've had with some of the handicaps over the jumps, hurdles, and fences to see the entries, the numbers of horses.
Yeah.
It's
the
just
bottom line, Matt, is that more people have the chance of winning a really good race on the flat nowadays. It's clear for all to see, isn't it?
Definitely. Yeah, I've got a note here to mention horses to follow from last season at this point, but I'm betting quite big here that you can actually recall what they were.
I can actually. Mine's entered on Sunday at Donny.
Oh, there we go. That's why I've had a note.
Yeah, you'll know this horse. It's called Trilby. It's Sam England. Fairly small stable, but very canny yard. And he's had a fair bit of racing, but he's a really smooth travelling sprint handicapper. And I haven't had a look at Sunday's race, but I'm really sure this horse will improve his rating again this time, and that he'll pop up and win a sprint handicap or two. So I'll be keeping a close eye on Trilby at Donny on Sunday. Now, I'm not sure whether the other lads can remember what horse they put up, because it's quite a while ago at the back end of last flat season. David, can you recall?
Yeah, I can. It's a horse called Bona Fortuna, who doesn't yet hold an entry, but he just looks a really interesting horse. Was trained as a 2-year-old by Carl Burke, and then picked up relatively cheaply by Michael Appleby. Won his first 2 for that stable, and then didn't quite get home when they tried him at 7 furlongs on his final start of the year. But that did actually come in a really strong race that worked out extremely well. It was won by North View at Newbury. So I'm not sure exactly where he's going to end up, whether it might be that he didn't quite see out 7 furlongs because he doesn't stay that trip, or whether with another year on his back, maybe he will be effective at 7. But either way, back at 6, certainly, he looks the kind of horse that should win handicaps this year. And should mention he's also in as my horse to follow in Timeform's A Horses to Follow book, which I would like to point out is now available on Amazon and also in the Weatherby's bookshop.
Nice plug. Fran, have you got another? Was it Ocean of Dreams?
Yeah.
Normally
my ones end up running to Triumph Hurl for some reason, but it's I was lucky enough to contribute to the Timeform annual as well, the flat annual, so a horse to follow, 5 of them, but one from that and one outside of that. William Mullins with a flat horse, with a good one. He has had a couple of nice 3-year-olds over the years, but it's mainly staying chasers. But he's got a filly called Candleford, runs in the Barney Stud colours, who've had a decent horse, of course, with William Haggis, and this filly's from the family of the filly that might have won the Pretty Polly off the top of my head. I just can't remember the breeding, but on debut at Leopardstown, it looked like having made up a lot of ground from here. She got up in the dying stride. I think I called it wrong in racing TV. The stand side had won, but it's a cracking debut effort, and she's very well bred. I think she's interesting. Candleford is definitely a stakes filly in the making, I think, for the Champions Jumps trainer when he turns attention to the flat after Punchestown, maybe. And on the Ian O'Brien team, I took a flyer with one of my own the other day as well. Lord Byron, Camelot horse by out of Naga Khan family that have all done very well in middle distances. Look at the result, he was beaten 7 lengths in debut at Punchestown, but I thought he shaped way better than the bare result. Tricky track, sharp track, undulating, was all at sea, but last furlong he really got going, and if you let the video run on, he galloped out by everything in a strong manner after the line as well. So bit to work on there. Lord Byron, an interesting one, and Candleford 2 once race maidens to keep improving, hopefully, as the year goes on.
Lovely. She's actually a half to Candleford. She's called Candleford Green, I think. Is that the one?
Candleford Green, sorry. Yeah,
that's
it.
Yeah. All good. Duly noted. Fantastic. We're about 10 days away from the Grand National, and I've left about 6 minutes to wrap that up. Can you tell I was a late call up this week, chaps? I mean, traditionally, you generally get a bit of sort of nationwide excitement at this time of year. GC, are you feeling it yet, or?
No, and that's worrying. Not for me. I'm thinking more generally. Lots of newspaper column inches and podcasts have been devoted to that question recently. Has the Grand National lost its essence? Not even a question for mine. have a look at the TV figures. I think last year 6.1 million was a record low for the modern era. Channel 4's final national in 2016 was 9.6. That's a massive drop off when you consider that ITV is a bigger channel with a bigger reach than Channel 4. And there are many, many reasons for this, many, many reasons. But there's no question that it first of all, lads, it depends how you define essence. What is its essence? To me, the National's essence is it's the ultimate test of jumping, stamina, and courage. And it's not that anymore when you can see an iffy jumper like I Am Maximus parked right on the inside, what used to be called the brave man's route, hardly takes off at the chair, doesn't lose an ounce of momentum, and wins like he could go around again. So it's a very, very different race. And I understand, I absolutely understand the drive for increased safety. I get it completely.
It's not going back, is it?
Sorry? No,
It's not
absolutely
going,
not.
no.
So I get it completely, but has the National lost its essence? It's not even a debate, is it?
I think GC sums it up well, and I share very similar views. Just like, yes, you can see why it's changed, but it has taken something away from the excitement to the race for the likes of me and GC and, you know, us diehards, for want of a better phrase, that have been looking at races like the National for the last 20, 30 years or so.
There's a reason why people congregate on the bends at Formula One races. They like danger. They like danger. And the other thing for me is, I've said it before, and I won't dwell on the point. As a media person, I don't want to ride with the narrative of no horse dies triumph, one horse dies disaster. I can't be doing with that. So I cannot wait for Aintree. There are so many real good talking points and high quality races to wait for. But the National is not the race it used to be, and people are voting with the remote controls.
As punters, we sort of just have to adapt, don't we, and approach it from a slightly different angle. Interesting, obviously, the debate around, you know, owners, trainers, 3 runners max per trainer. What struck me there was, you know, if Willie Mullins was only allowed 3 runners, I don't think the horse that I think has a good chance would actually be in the lineup. It's one of them.
But also, again, David touched on a good point about things that aren't going to happen. That's one. I guarantee you that's one, because penalising success is, as Greg Wood pointed out, is no way for a sport to go on. And it would absolutely open the door to switcheroos 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks before the race itself. That's not going to happen. But what do you think about this, lads? This Mr. Van Gogh is an interesting test case, because he is the type of horse who really enlivens a race like the National. Very small stable, giant Brontosaurus look-alike horse, thriving with 3 big staying wins in the mud. And now, no question, he's earned a rating to get into the National. But because the weights were framed before he won at Uttoxeter, he can't run it. Now, the BHA, and we all bag them in various different ways, they are not known for imagination in their race planning, etc. This is a strong case for saying, if you've improved to a mark that would get you into the race, into the top 34 by race day, you're in. That is something that is achievable, and that's something I would favour. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd say something similar. If you've improved to a rating that would get you in the race, if you want to run off that new rating, you should be allowed to. So I think Mr. Van Gogh is now rated 152, isn't he, which would get him in. If they want to take up that option and eschew the fact that he would be potentially well handicapped, well, it's no use being well handicapped if you can't get in, is it? So if they wanted to run off 152, I would let them.
It's the law of unintended consequences, isn't it? You reduce the field to 34, that keeps horses like Mr. Van Gogh out. You make the fences much easier, that brings in a different type of horse. Therefore, evolve, react, and make 1 or 2 tweaks here and there that get certain horses in that would really, you know, enliven the race. What do you think, Fran?
I think a win in your in structure is the way to go, Graham. Maybe to, you know, and that
Definitely.
hopefully hopefully it will increase competition through the year as well. We know it
100%.
works with the Sky Bet Ebor to an extent on a smaller level. I'm on the flat pattern committee here in Ireland, and obviously trying to boost the Irish Derby. We've gone that route, or racecourse by advisement has gone that route, and the more that, the better. It gives people a more incentive on a day to be involved in the finish of, particularly when you're dealing with handicap marks of a race. The Uttoxeter Midlands National has a lot of memories for me. Dad trained Laura's boat to win it back in 1992, was it? The rain arrived, first time blinkers. He bombed out into Kimure on the Tuesday at Cheltenham, and they brought him on to Uttoxeter, and he ended up in the Grand National by that traditional route and finished third to party politics that year as well. So I think that them races, if you had winning, you're in for the likes of Midlands National, the Cheltenham races, a Leopardstown chase, whatever you want to mix into it, and make them win in your in race for national. It can really strengthen competition to get into the national via one race effectively, and maybe boost the quality and competition of them races. So I think you're on a win-win all round, and hopefully that'll add today. Somebody like a small stable like Mr. Van Gogh getting into the race, but he'd be getting into the race also as a horse that's in form going into the race. So I think that would be an important one as well.
Just looking at the national then this year on potentially drying ground, just very, very briefly, a quick spin. What's top of the shortlist, Fran?
Percival Le Galwa. I just think when a stable is on a roll, now he's put people out of houses over the years because he was backed for every big handicap going, and he was placed. He couldn't win, but it all came good from it in the Paddy Power Chase at Christmas. Back over hurls, he bolted up in the part-times qualifier, wasn't it, at Irish Dublin Racing Festival, back over hurls, and he's back over fences. And with the new dimensions of Aintree, the way he travels, never thought he'd be good enough for a national, but he's going there in great form. And Graham, you know this, David, you know this, when a stable like Gavin Cromwell is on a roll, the way success can build. Henry de Brom, I think of him 4 years ago, came out Cheltenham, Manila Indo went and done it, so there is an effect there going into spring festivals, and I just have a feeling Percival could be the one, but we'd be interested to see what you think.
He's got a few, as Cromwell.
Yeah, you can see why he thinks he doesn't need I Know Your Way You're Thinking as well, can't you? When you see what hand that he might be able. But I haven't got any strong views. I've got an anti-post bet on Highland, who I thought shaped pretty well in what used to be the Racing Post Trophy at Kempton. He ran second in the Grade 1 there over Christmas to the Ben Pauling horse, who missed the rest of the season in the Cowtoe Star. Just a different profile to a lot of these. Is obviously just a novice, but jumps soundly, likely to be up with the pace. But he might run pretty well. I think he needs one or two still to come out, but you'd like to think he'd get in. So yeah, Highland is the one.
You had a right touch with Noble Yates, a very lightly raced horse for a national horse a couple of years ago. Do you find it? Well, you obviously find it relatively easy to find a winner, but do you find it? You must approach it from a very different standpoint than the way you used to.
Yeah, I mean, with Noble Yates, it was. Fran touched upon it there. It was a time where Emmett Mullins was doing things differently. If someone was going to rewrite that rule around a 7-year-old and around a novice and a lightly raced horse like that, it was going to be him. I think you have to approach it totally differently in terms of the jumping. It was referred to fairly recently as like one of the biggest, almost like a staying handicap hurdle, and that second circuit really really does resemble that kind of race, doesn't it? Just looking at some of the entries now, there is one horse where I thought if he was in the JP McManus colours, his price would be a heck of a lot shorter, and he's running similar sort of races to some of, I know the way you're thinking. I'm looking at Minella Kakuna, who's obviously running the Grade 1s all this season, and he's just one of those horses he's running the Savills, he ran in the Irish Gold Cup, and then he's running the Bobby Joe. He's running the strong trial races, and he's had a very quiet season with a view to peaking again in the spring. I'm absolutely certain of that, considering he came good late doors last year in the Bet365, the Gold Cup at Sandown, where he won by a neck, and I think he was probably valued for a good bit more there. I love Danny Mullins. This horse really does want good ground. And like I say, if he was owned by JP McManus, I think this horse popping around the back in the Savills and the Irish Gold Cup, he would be a lot shorter, and you're getting 25-1 across the board. But yeah, you do have to approach the race very differently. I'm obviously glad that I know the way you're thinking isn't running, because he'd have won easily. DJ?
Not really anything to add.
No strong view. Sorry, Highland,
yeah.
backed, haven't you?
Yeah.
Sorry, Graham. It was I was after a top three, Graham. Nothing.
I couldn't name more than half a dozen horses. Honestly, I couldn't.
All right, let me come to you.
Do it, but I'll do it from my own purpose. In the last couple of days, it's not exciting me in the way it used to. You know, when I see a 4.25 mile handicap chase, and about 18 runners have a chance turning for home, and there are 7 in a line jumping the last. That's too hard for me. It's just too hard.
That's brilliant. I'll come to you for Constitution Hill then. He's odds on to beat, well, I mean, we don't really know what's going to line up here, do we? But we could see Lossy Mouth. We could see Brighter Days Ahead as well. So,
yeah.
What do we expect here?
Well, the big Grade 1s at Aintree look like being really intriguing this year. And fingers crossed, we see Constitution Hill, Lossy Mouth, and Brighter Days Ahead. That would be, a hell of an Aintree hurdle. It really would. And Patrick Mullins seemed to be lighting the blue touch paper for that clash, didn't he? There isn't a mare's Grade 1 Aintree, so they can't do a switcheroo. So that would be great. I'm really looking forward to seeing Grey Dawning in the Aintree Bowl. I know he only won a small field race at Kelstow, but the spring in his jumping is absolutely tremendous. And I think that type of jumping on over those stiff fences on the mile make course, it really can reap dividends. So I can't wait to see him. Colwell Potter, another bold grey front runner. I've got one to mention for the Hunter Chase, which is sentences you thought you'd never say. Fran will know this horse, remember him well from his Jesse Harrington days. Lifetime Ambition. I went for a touch in the National, Curragh National, and he was absolutely loving it when a loose horse got in his way at the 9th, very, very early. But he's held his own very well in Hunter Chases for his new yard. He's won a couple of points recently, and I could see him being a real prime player in the Hunter Chase on the Thursday, I think.
Lovely stuff. Fran, we've got a word on him if you want, and then Gordon Elliott. He basically skipped the Dublin Racing Festival and went all in on Cheltenham, which obviously was a struggle until breaking his duck in the very last race. He looks like he might have a strong hand here at Aintree again.
Yeah, I'd say potentially. I suppose there's one thing to bear in mind, Matt. It's Aintree's a week earlier than normal this year in comparison, was it, to last year's festival? And Easter being a bit later, you do have the option of Fairyhouse, which in turn obviously rolls on to Punchestown. It gets a bit congested in late April, and Sandown as well. But I'd imagine Gordon had great success there last year, and with Willie Mullins not chasing the Trainers' Championship, maybe to point, 1.2 million behind Dan Skelton at present. He need a really good entry to get in contention. So you'd respect the LA team when they go there as well. Just with the timing of Easter and the earlier Aintree meeting, that maybe would affect some horse run at Cheltenham as well. But the horses are definitely in form, Gordon. He had 6 winners last Monday. He 5% of his horses at Cheltenham were in the first 4. It's just one of them weeks. But be interested to see what he does next year as regards Dublin Race Festival and how they approach the rest of the year. But I was also at the launch of the Irish Grand National yesterday, lads, and obviously Maximus heads up the weights. You'd have to think if he goes to Aintree, he won't be there as well. So there's going to be a 10 or 11 pounds rise in the weights. But I've no knowledge if he's running. But after doing my conquers on him at Cheltenham in a lucky manner, Johnny Who, one firm is still going 14-1 on him as we speak for the Irish National. I think I'd take my chance at him with that, given the form of that race, the promise of it, and the fact John O'Neill has won an Irish National twice in the past.
Shut the Front Door, was that theirs that won the Irish Grand National as well?
And Butler's Cabin, yeah.
Lovely stuff. Oh, what a way to finish. What a way to finish. Time has beaten us, unfortunately, though, chaps, for this week. But thanks to our team. Thanks for your views this week. Thanks for listening wherever you may be out there. Be lucky this week. and this weekend. And we'll be back, no doubt, with a deeper dive into the Grand National, where GC will share his Grand National 1, 2, 3 around this time next week. But bye for now. Thanks for listening.
Download the Sporting Life app for the best racing coverage, including live racing blogs, fast results, stable tours, trainer and jockey interviews, expert opinion, and tips.